on the computer. There we go. All right, recording in progress. Let me make my screen in the middle. Spotlight for everyone. There we go. All right, so we're going to start here. My name is Kelly Frankenberg. I think I know all of you. And this is Plein Air Painting, the secrets of the plein air painter in our cabin fever reliever workshop sessions this winter and through Art to Change the World. And I'm assistant director. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some background, and then I will paint a painting, do a demo for you. So I got to explain these glasses, though. They're super, super cool. I love them. But no, they're not really for the sun. Okay, so what these are is actually called value glasses, designed by Eric Rhodes. His name is on the side. Eric Rhodes Value Specs. He heads up the Plein Air Convention and Expo, which that's what influenced me to do more plein air painting and teach. Actually, Barbara wanted to know, what did you learn there? How did you get so good? Teach us. So that's the other reason I'm doing this class. So these value specs help us see value. So value is between, so light and dark, right? That's what value is. So when I'm painting and I want to know, well, there's a green color and a red color, they look kind of the same value. I need to see which one's darker or lighter, and I can't tell because one's red, one's green, right? So I put these on, and they're red lenses. So they make everything red, and then you can see what's lighter and what's darker. So that red next to that green, I'll be able to see, oh, that green's actually a little bit darker than this red. So when I paint it, I know the value. So that's what these cool things are. All right, so let's get to it. A little background on me. I went to Minneapolis College of Art and Design. I wanted to be a children's book illustrator, which meant painting, 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 drawing, 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 and design. So that's kind of my background, but I travel so much that I want to paint on my travels. So I usually bring a little watercolor pad with me to paint. So I will show you some of my stuff. But we're going to learn about what plein air is. Plein air means open air. So painting in the open air, which usually means outside, or as we call it ATCW, like on location. We have an on location where you go and you draw or paint what you see. And then, so I think it's good to know about that. So when you do hear the word, you know what it means. And when you do see paintings, you know that, oh, wow, they actually stood there outside and painted that. They didn't just use a photograph. And I'll tell you why it's better to paint from life than a photo. Eventually. All right. So you can decide if maybe this is something you want to try someday, or you can just get entertained by me today. All right. So we are moving on to some examples. I will show you, I'm going to share my screen with you and show you some examples so you get an idea, and then I'll show you some of my examples. So we're going to talk about our objectives. I just went over. We're going to talk about what should I paint? You know, you can't just walk outside and paint anything, can you? We're also going to talk about what equipment to use. Look at this big heavy thing here. This folds down into like a little briefcase. Susan and I bought one of these, and we were just like, oh my God, this thing is so heavy. She drove, but I had to carry this on the airplane in a suitcase, and it's a big heavy thing. I ended up getting this smaller tripod that's just more of a thing that sits on a tripod, and then the tripod folds up, not this big heavy wood thing. Or you can just go out with a little watercolor thing and paint as well. And then we're going to talk about values and composition and getting started. So what to paint and the different media that most of the plein air painters use. So I'm going to go to share screen first and show you some of my favorite examples online. Of course, my folder happens to be all the way down there. All right. All right. Okay, so hopefully you can see some of these. This one is one I did. This is not a plein air painting, but I just want you to see that some paintings, can't really see my pointer here. Are you seeing the painting or are you seeing me? You're probably seeing the painting, right? All right. Some paintings, this one has a mountain. If you look on the left of the mountain side, you can see that the snow on the mountain is actually lighter than the cloud behind it. So even though we see sky, we don't really necessarily, it may not be the lightest thing in our painting. This is a painting by Emily Olson. She does watercolor. She's very good. She does some acrylic too, but this is kind of showing off about holding your painting right in the outdoors, and it fits right in the background. She does a lot of that. There's one there, and you can see, you can even test, did I get the color right? I'm going to hold the painting right up to the landscape. Right, here's another one. You can see how that fits right in there. And another one. This one looks more like oil. And now I'm going to show you, this is some of David Becker's work. He's out of Chicago, but he comes to Minnesota a lot to teach. And this is actually watercolor with gouache on top of it. So gouache is like watercolor, but it's a more opaque, and you can layer it on top. His work is crazy, incredibly realistic. Another artist that I wanted to show is Laurie Putnam. She was featured at our convention last time. She paints a lot. This looks like brushwork, but she paints a lot with a palette knife sometimes. This is oil, I believe. And one thing about her is that she didn't become an artist or a painter until she was like 50. She just, I think she's 60, and I think she started when she was like 50. She just said, I'm gonna start painting, and she did. This one here is one of her works, and I just wanted to show you that the lightest light in this painting, the lightest value is the white house, but it's not all white, is it? There's so many different colors in there, and that yellow that's on there is so actually quite darker, but it appears like the white house, right? But it's not just painted white. Another artist we got to learn is Michelle Dunaway. She does these amazing paintings and portraits, and she got one of her paintings was in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, next to the famous ones. But the interesting thing I find about her work was this painting right here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Because it's kind of startled me when she said, sometimes portraits are just about the light, not even the person that you're painting. And I thought, how could a portrait not be about the person? But for her, this painting is just about the light, what the light is doing, how the light's coming from behind and touching this guy and outlining him. And so one reason why she loves to paint from life is because she can see the light coming from behind and forming the little lightness on his hairs, on his beard. And when you take a photograph of something like this, you can't see all of those details. You can't see how that hair moves around in that light. That's something you can only see in person. So that's one reason why plein air painters like to paint from life, because you can get more of some depth. You can see what's going on through leaves, just different textures. So this is an oil painting. And now I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. See if we can get back to me. Okay, there we go. I'm also going to show you pastel. So another thing people paint with plein air is pastel. So this is an example of a pastel painting by Doug Dawson. And I thought pastel was drawing because you're using a tool and you're drawing, right? But pastel is considered a painting because it's actually the ground pigments that go in paint. So that's why they consider it a painting. So there's a lot of people that paint in pastel that go to the conventions and paint. So they just bring their little pastels and they draw just like all of us painters. All right, so another couple examples of some great people. This is a watercolor, very recognizable style now by Buffalo Kaplinsky is his name. And Susan and I got to listen to the lecture there by a guy named Charlie Easton. These are all his paintings. He's a crazy guy living in Canada in the cold, and he goes out in the cold and he paints all these beautiful pictures. And one thing I want you to notice about these is the horizon lines. They're never, ever, ever in the center. Because with Charlie, he wants to emphasize something. If he wants to emphasize the sky, the painting's almost all sky. If he wants to emphasize the mountains, the painting's almost all mountain. So he changes his based on what story he wants to tell. So some of his secrets are advice is, what story do you want to tell? Is it cold when you put your feet in this water? Is that the story you want to tell? Then make the painting about that. So that's what his advice is. All right, so talk a little bit about composition before we start painting. Hopefully you can see here. So if this is my outside of my picture, so basic composition, you don't want to put things in the middle. You don't want to put the horizon line in the middle. It should be up or down. You don't want to put something in the middle, so right or left. You also want to activate all four corners somehow with the composition, and you don't want anything right up. You don't want an edge right up against an edge. It either should be more over or coming outside of the painting. And then we have value. So value is very, very important when you're plein air painting. Why? Because it's all about the light. And in order to show the light, you have to have a range of from light to dark. And plein air paintings, the most difficult thing about plein air painting is when you're outside, the light moves constantly. The clouds move all day, right? Things are moving. There's a boat going by, the clouds, the wind, everything. But the light, all the shadows change. And when you're painting outside, that's what you're doing, is showing all the shadows on everything. And they're going to constantly change throughout the day. So that's one challenge we have. But we want to know what's our lightest light. That'll be number 1. Our second lightest, well, darker to darker is 2, 3, and then our darkest dark is 4. So plein air painters will actually sometimes paint their dark and light. So this is the painting that I've done already in a value study. So I know that my clouds are going to be my lightest. And then kind of the sky is going to be some of these valley area in here, and my rocks in my river. Let's see, I can show you. So essentially this is what I'm painting. So you can see I did a value study first. So I know what exactly is going to be my darkest dark. And that's going to be the shadow on my trees and the shadow up here and my trees. And then the darker parts are going to be this mountain and here. But what really is important about this is that the darkest things are usually right in front of you because of something called atmospheric perspective, where everything fades as it gets farther and farther and farther away from you. So the darkest dark is usually going to be what's right in front of you. So before we get painting, let me show you a couple of my paintings. This is a painting that I did in Italy, very northern Italy. So this is Austria right here. This is Italy right here. And I sat here for about 3 hours, I think, and painted. And so during that time, you know, the light on the mountain changed, the shadows change. But I still have my lightest light up here. And then my second, the farthest thing away, right? And then my third. And then my fourth is these darks that are closer up. Recently, you may have seen this on Facebook. This is what I did recently from a photo. And so my lightest light's obviously going to be where the sun is hitting everything. And the sun had popped out from under this huge dark thing of clouds. So even though this is still like sky and clouds, it was still a lot darker than all the other areas, right? And then I have my middle section. And then my darkest dark is these places in between the rocks that are close up. This is one I did a while back, and I usually paint in acrylic, so these are all acrylics. This was from my mom's place in Utah. I'm just trying to get rid of the reflection here, but you can see that the atmospheric perspective, so the sky is going to be the lighter, right? But this is right here. This is farther away than this area right here, right? So this is going to be lighter. It faded because there's some fog here in the valley. And then you have the edge of the porch is your third value. It's like 3.5 value. And then your fourth value is going to be the dark shadow of the top of the porch and the railing. Now, this is a print of a painting that I did because I sold the original, but this is something that I wanted to show you that I didn't paint this plein air, but I wanted to show you that I regret painting the sky so dark because the sky really wouldn't have been that dark. So that's why I have to keep in mind remembering the value study. What's the lightest light? What's the darkest dark? So during the convention, we went to the Rocky Mountains. So here's where some of these, some of this advice contradicts itself sometimes. So after I painted this, I did what Charlie said and said, okay, find your story. My story, I wanted it to be a conversation between two trees. Well, when I did that, then I wanted to also do something else, which was omit things, decide what you're going to omit. Because for me, the biggest struggle for me was I wanted to paint everything I saw and have it exactly like what the thing looks like, but that's not going to give you the best painting. So I had to break through that and feel free to omit things. So I got rid of a road that went over here that I didn't really like. And then there was a bunch of like little rocks and I'm like, okay, I'll take those rocks out. I'll take the road out. Then later, one of the instructors was like, oh, well, you should have left the rocks in because that would have grounded this and this and this. So I'm like, oh, I tried to listen to their advice, but then, you know, they contradict each other. So you have to decide what works for you and what's best for you. But see the value study here, the lightest light and the darkest darks. The problem here, this tree is the same value as this tree. So that was a problem for me. I needed to make this one lighter. So we got the idea that it's farther away. So after studying and coming back, I did this picture and I picked a good picture because it already had really good elements going on in here, design elements anyway. And I kept in mind that the lightest light, 2, 3, 4, darkest dark. Okay. So with that said, I do have some watercolor examples quick to show, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to start painting. So I have my value study, and sometimes this is how the painters will start. They will paint a value study with grays, with browns, and then they will paint directly on there to make sure that their values match. Or they will have it next to their painting and use it as a reference. So I'm just going to look at the reference. I've painted this a few times, but we're going to get right into painting. So you have something fun to watch. All right, so this is what I do. I use recycled whatever containers that I would throw away anyway. Use them as long as I can. And for today's session, I'm using this and this. So I'm going to pretty much paint everything with this brush. We have a, what is that? 9 by 12. All right, so this is acrylic paint and I didn't pre-mix anything. My water's over here. And so I'm going to start showing you how I do it. Get a good viewing here. Hopefully that's bright enough. Yeah. All right, so you can kind of see the picture up there, printed out a little dark. But what I like to do is I start from the top down usually, or also the back to the front. All right, so to get my color, usually I use an ultramarine blue and I mix all my colors from the primary colors, but this time this sky reads to me as a little bit more vibrant. So I'm using a phthalo blue, which I don't recommend it for a green because it will give you like the most neon green ever. But I'm just going to drop my blue in here and get it in there. And I'm going to add some darker blue. And I'm just kind of mixing the paint right on the paper because we have such a small space, a lot of paint, and a big brush. And with this, I don't know if you can see, but the tree, so here's where the mountains are. This tree is sticking up above the mountains, which I like. But this tree right here is sticking up to the top. It's touching the top of the mountain, which doesn't make it very interesting. We either want to move the tree down a little bit or move it up. So that's what I'm choosing to change in this picture. And I'm also going to omit this thing that's sticking out. This picture was taken by my friend Joel Lampe when he was in Colorado. So that's where the photo's from. I'm also going to omit, I don't know if you can see here, there's this like weird light reflection line coming down on here. And I'm going to choose to omit that as well. The paint hasn't dried yet. So I'm just gonna move it around. We have to clean the brush between colors, especially when we're going lighter or we're going to contaminate our white with a color. So I'm just going to drop in some clouds for now, and I'm going to go back in and highlight them later. Because clouds aren't just white. If we look up here, we have some like grayish blue to give them some dimension. And to make gray, I add the colors opposite. Opposite of blue is actually orange. So if I add a little orange, I'm going to get a grayer tone that I can put in there as well. I'm painting on a piece of canvas paper. All right, so now I'm going to put in my, well, we can drop some white values down in here to remind myself to leave room for highlight and whiteness, and some blue down here. But now I'm going to mix my value that I decided was number 3. Okay. And that's going to be this like turquoise. This mountain looks very turquoise here because it's a green mountain, a little bit in the background with this atmospheric perspective. But I don't want it to get muddy. If I mix all the colors, they're going to be too muddy. And we don't want it to be too brilliantly bright either. So I'm going to tone it down, if you can see what I'm doing. All right, and then I'm going to put this on the paper. Now I can still decide, because you can paint over acrylic. So I can still decide if this is going to be too dark. This might be too dark because I want my trees in the front that are dark to be this shade. So that means I have to lighten this up. And it got a little green, so I'm going to add more blue and lighten this up like a lot. And there's also some lighter areas within that I will wait and put in later. So I'm also drawing with my brush right now, trying to decide what this shape looks like. But I can paint over that too. So I think I'm going to mix the color that goes below it next. So I'm rinsing off my brush right now off camera. And it starts out, all this rock here starts out kind of pinkish, purplish, and then kind of goes into a bluish fade. And sometimes it's hard to train our eyes to see the color when we've just been so used to, you know, thinking, oh, that's a tree trunk. Tree trunks are brown. Well, yeah, but if you get up really close to it, you're going to see all the color inside of that. It is not just brown, right? Like one of my favorite quotes is that Monet said that he wished that he had been born blind and then later regained his sight so he could paint just shapes and colors and he wouldn't have know what he was looking at. Because once you know what you're looking at, your brain tells you, oh, well, that's a tree, that's green. That's this color, that's this shape. Well, no. So right now we're training our eyes to see, okay, what shape is this? What color is this? I don't even care what I'm looking at right now. I don't want to know what I'm looking at. I just want to see colors and shapes. So I have to remember to keep this color still pretty light because it is not right in front of my face in the painting or in the picture. Okay, and there is some of this color in the rocky, very rocky, somewhat watery area. Okay, now I kind of got that part in there. Let's put in the highlights in the mountains. So I got a kind of light blue here. And this is moving around more like oil paint just because it's still thick and it hasn't dried out so much. All right, so now I'm going to go in and put the yellows in there. And you see there's quite a very lemon yellow. Some of it fades to a greenish color. But the lemon yellow I have is quite neon, so I'm going to mix it with a little bit of normal yellow, cadmium yellow. And I think there's some green on my brush, which is good because some of this yellow is a little green. It will mesh with this purple, so I have to be careful for that. It dries. and very bright yellow. I had a horrible experience using the wrong white the other day. It ended up being translucent mixing white, and so none of it was attaching to my canvas, and none of it was making the paint lighter, and I was so frustrated. I couldn't figure out why. It took me like 10 minutes, and then I realized that's what ruined my last painting was I wasn't even using white. So read the labels, Kelly, read the labels. All right, the other thing about yellow is it's extremely translucent. So sometimes you have to put some white with it to get it to cover some things. So some more yellow to go over this purple without it mixing in. All right, so right now it looks a little abstract, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go in now with some a little bit yellowish green because there's some greener areas in there. Then now I gotta clean my brush because it has a little yellow green on it, and we gotta go in and put some of these orange colors in there. Little bit of orange. Orange is like, I hate mixing orange. And at the convention, I completely embarrassed myself because the painter was using orange from the tube, and I'm like, why are you using orange from the tube? And he's like, why do you not use orange from the tube? So then I had to explain myself to a room of people. And I was like, well, I like to keep the color pure, and I mix my own orange. And I just wanted to know why you don't. But yeah, it's hard to get a good orange because it usually ends up looking peach. But I'm using cadmium red, which will not mix a good purple. All right, so there's not much orange in here, just a little bit. Okay. All right. Great. So now I'm going to go in and drop some of these darker green trees in here. And they are quite dark. They are between 3 and 4 value. And I want to make sure I have the right color here, because if they're too bright, I have to add a little red to it, which is green's opposite, to make it more earth tone. Except these trees are pretty green. Green, but they're a little bit evergreen. So I'm going to just drop some of these trees in, and yet I'm using the same brush. And I'm not super anal about their shape right now. Just kind of their position in here. And, you know, you can use a tiny brush if you really want to. But for this purpose, I'm going to use this one. And I could be omitting trees right now. So the conversation I had with one of the masters about eliminating things, they're like, oh yeah, eliminate this tree. I don't want this tree here. I'm going to eliminate this tree. And I said, yeah, okay. But what if you're painting like Paris and you're painting a very recognizable city, and people are going to expect, oh, well, where's this church? You know, so you can't just omit everything. And she's like, well, yeah, you can. She's like, oh, I omit things all the time. She's like, oh, I was painting Paris once. It turned into New York City by the end. And this lady bought it saying, oh, this reminds me of Paris. And so, but I would have a hard time omitting too many things in a recognizable city. But hey, it works for some artists. All right. So now I have my trees over there. And drop my trees in over here. And I'm going to do a little Bob Ross, a little happy tree over here. Okay, that wasn't his voice though. I don't remember what his voice is. All right, so now I'm over here where I made that decision, where I decided that that tree was not gonna hit right at the top of that mountain, that I was either gonna go lower or higher. I forgot, I painted this the other day. I forgot if I went lower or higher, but we're gonna go lower today. And then we will drop in that tree that goes up here. Oh, now I look and I see, and it's a little bit redder. I need more red in my brush. So I'm just holding my brush different directions. And I'm going to drop in this dark tree. And so I haven't put my darkest dark on here yet. Notice that. All right, so now I'm going to see, does anywhere else need a tree or need this green color? No. but I need to put my darker darks down here as well and fill in some areas. So I'm just going to get this off my brush. And we are doing great on time. So I'm also looking my painting over. Do I need to fix anything? Oh, it's a good thing I have a napkin over here. I'm going to fix some of these lines. And let's put some more highlights on our clouds. And the good thing about clouds is they don't have to be perfect because they're so organic and they move so much. And same thing with rocks and trees. That's why landscape is quite fun to do. The worst part, I have to confess, is definitely bridges and buildings, because the hardest thing to do is make a straight line over and over and over, especially with a darn brush. That's what a tattoo artist will tell you. The hardest thing to do is to make a barcode, because you have to make line, 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 perfect, perfect, perfect. I did do a bridge series because challenging myself, and I love it. Just putting some highlights in the rocks right now. But I will tell you, it's very frustrating, especially when you want to be free and moving around like I'm doing right now. So it looks like my water is misshaped. So I'm going to fix that while I fill in this area over here. And what I like to do is cover the whole canvas as soon as possible, so you have no canvas showing through. No, this is light making, okay, this is light. There we go. All right, so now you can see a little bit more without a reflection. And let me drop in this land. All right, so now we just need to give some of these things dimension. I'm going to mix brown. And I don't really use black. I have black on my palette here. I like to mix my own black. So here we go. So here's a brown. So this is made out of red and yellow right now, but we're going to tone it down with a little blue. Or green, rather. So it's not such a bright brown. We don't want a garish brown. So I'm going in with my darks where there's some shadows, because this can't all be yellows, right? Okay. And just give that some more dimension and some texture. All right. And add some browns in my rocky river of rocks, rather. All right, so now it's time I can put in my darkest dark. So like I said, I don't like to make black. I mean, I don't like to use black. I'll show you what makes a really good black. Oh, let me just draft my brush a tad. So what makes a really good black, and not even a black, just a dark dark, is some blue, ultramarine blue, and some cadmium red or alizarin crimson, doesn't matter which one. That makes a very, very, very dark color right here, you can see. And then your painting isn't washed out by just a black. One class I was in college, we were doing oil painting of a figure, and the teacher would not allow us to use black unless it was mixed with white in a highlight. And so forcing yourself to paint without that is a challenge. So, but I use it a lot. I rarely ever put any black in my paintings unless I absolutely need to. So we can give the tree a little bit more dimension here to make it look more like a tree. And that turned out a little more red than I wanted it to. Change that because I think it's more of a bluish green here. Yeah, and there's still some red on my brush, but you get the idea. And then we will put our dark darks down in here in the front, because things that are closer, like I said, they are going to be darker as you go back, called atmospheric perspective. All right, so I'm just making some purple rocks because I feel like a lot of this stuff is quite purple. And it just gives it a look of rocks. All right, so I'm not going to sign this painting right now, but I usually will sign in the corner and just my initials and the year. All right, there you go. And then when I pull off the tape, it'll look all party. Okay. Okay, so this is one I did the other night. You can kind of see I painted it slightly different. Kind of similar, right? But that's how I paint. I'm glad we still have 15 minutes because first of all, I want to take questions. And then I also I do have my friend, like I said, who went to the convention with me, is here tonight, and she has a painting to share as well. And I do have a couple other paintings to share if we have time. Let me quick share one because I just happened to see it at the end of my thing. So this painting I did in 2003. So I did this while sitting on my relative's friend's balcony one night, and I forgot what lake this is, but this is in Lillehammer, Norway. And we were just sitting there and the sun was setting. So that's a very challenging time, right? Because the light's just completely fading, going away. Everything's dark really soon. So not in Norway in the summer, luckily. Sun doesn't really set, goes down at like 1 in the morning and comes up at 3. So it never really gets dark, but it still kind of gets low, right? So the clouds were constantly moving, but these ones had just such a fun little thing going on that once I put them in there, whether they went away or not, I kept them in the painting. And that's the biggest challenge here. So I don't know if we went over all of the secrets. Let me just make sure we touched on all those. Okay. So what to omit? You always want to omit something. Like if there was this huge tree over here, maybe I would want to get rid of that, right? If this tree, see how it didn't come exactly up to here, it's down a little bit. This tree did break through this a little bit because we wouldn't want it touching right here. Maybe I would want to omit this bridge. I don't know. So anyway, let's see. So don't worry about having a finished painting. So that's another thing to know about plein air. Even though I went out, I painted this, it was finished. A lot of plein air painters, they look at that light coming in and they do some studies and then they paint the rest in their studio. So you don't have to have, oh, this stress of, okay, I'm outside in the elements, it's raining, it's windy, I have 20 minutes, but I can't get a finished painting. I can't get a finished painting. I give up. No, you just take what information that you can get in the field, put it on whatever you're using, and then you can work in your studio and finish the painting, which is fine, or paint it another day. But just it's the taking away that anxiety and that worry and that frustration of thinking you have to have a final painting done outside. But the biggest challenge is the light changing. And another good thing is having the colors kind of relate. So here's some blue. This blue's again over here and a little over here. You want it to flow as a painting. And yeah, just decide what the story's going to be. You know, like this was just, for me, it was the clouds. But if I had done it after that, I probably would have come up with a better story. Okay. I will show quickly my recent painting of Paris from a photo a friend took. And this one, I just want to share that I use the value study, and I think it really helps me because my lightest light, and then the next was the sky. Even though the sky is at night, I still wanted to make sure that red is sky, but that red as nighttime. And then all the other number 3 values, and then the 4 are the dark right close to me in front. All right, Susan, would you be willing to share one of yours and any challenges that you had? I am going to see if I can unmute you. Hold on, you're still muted. Did it work?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I used to do some painting when I was like 19 years old, and I'm now a retired teacher, and I'm trying to get back to the love of my life. And I went to the PACE convention for the first time. didn't know anybody. I have very few skills. And so it was life-changing for me. Not only did I get to learn from all of the different artists, I got to meet a lot of people. I learned so much. And we got to paint out at 4 different locations: Garden of the Gods, Rocky Mountain National Park, El Dorado State Park, and Golden. And so I was one of those that didn't get finished. So I took it home and I finished it. And I did, this one is of El Dorado State Park. And I'm pretty happy with it.
That's beautiful.
So much to learn. And I signed up for Smoky Mountain National Park for May, and I'm counting the days because everybody at the PACE conventions were just so nice and so encouraging and welcoming. It was just probably the highlight of my decade. It was so nice. So, and then this one was of Golden. So
yeah, the city of Golden, Colorado. We got to all go out there and paint, and it was a beautiful tree. Susan captured it way better than me. I'm not showing mine.
I detailed, and so I'm trying to loosen up a little bit, but that's a goal of mine. So thanks for letting me share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm gonna see if I can come back to me. Okay, awesome. And so this is the Plein Air magazine. You can order that. And the expo that I went to was in Denver this year. This is the first time it's on the east side of the Mississippi, and it's going to be in North Carolina in the Smoky Mountains. So that's what I'll be doing. But they also have an outdoor painters of Minnesota group that you can join if you're in Minnesota. And yeah, does anyone have any questions for me?
I have a question.
I'll keep talking. Okay, speak up.
Can I ask? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
well, I was just wondering, is it like considered like not plein air if you snap a photo, like you're working and you're going to run out of time? Like, is it allowed for, snapping a photo and then using that to work off of? Do people do that? Or is that like, no, don't do that?
Yes. So we find a lot of the plein air painters will do that. So because it's when you're in the field, you're gathering information, and that's like you can do like a little study, and then they'll take it back with the photo and work from the study and the photo together. And the problem is that, yeah, do you actually call that plein air? Do you not? Do some people get upset about it? I don't recall exactly what we talked about. It was just kind of like, as long as most of the information you're getting is from the field or outdoors, it's okay. I think when I was going to enter a show, it said like so much percentage of your painting had to be done outdoors, and I don't remember what the percentage was. So I think that's a gray area depending, but that's a great question.
Yeah. I was wondering if the photo was like, no, don't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? I can just kind of, while you're thinking of questions, I'll just kind of flip through some of my ones in the field while traveling, just some quick watercolor. But yeah, if anyone has
Well, I
any
have a question.
Yes.
Do you actually paint that fast?
Yes and no. This particular size and the style I'm going for, yes. But if it's larger and I want it to look a little bit more refined and put some detail in, I did do a larger painting of this that's 10 by 20, so it's just a little bit extended. That one I probably put in like an extra 35, 45, maybe almost an hour more.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it just kind of depends. This was just a fast put down paint because it's so small. Like I can do a really small painting, but I would prefer, because my very big detailed ones do usually take 4 hours. The Paris one took 6 because there was just way too much darn detail in there. But like
I suppose you're an expert. So
well,
you've been doing
not always, but a little bit. Yeah, so like sometimes all the little detail take longer, and sometimes it's just a matter of throwing down some color. With watercolor, it's really quickly. Like for example, this took me like I don't even know, 20 minutes, because I'm just like, you get it wet, you drop in color and it's done. So I think watercolor can go a lot faster because it's more planning ahead of time. You don't have to put in so many colors. Excuse me, but yeah, there's just so to see how small these are, because when I travel, I don't want to bring a ton of paper with me. It's just like quick, 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 quick. Any other questions? Did y'all learn something?
Yes.
Good. This is
Can I
actually a
make
very detailed one from Edinburgh, Scotland. I sat there and I painted the castle. So this was a much longer.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah, because I got all the little detail in there.
You did.
So you
May I-
don't really draw things out like with pencil for, you just head right into painting most of the time.
I do, yeah, because I don't like the pencil line in there in watercolor. But I will draw out some lines in acrylic with yellow. So like this is just sitting down at a restaurant, and you know, people come, people go. So it's also like, you know, a lot of times I'll bring a sketchbook if I'm sitting in a restaurant, but because you know, it's like the heat will dry out your paint
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So trying to think if I have one more to show you. Show you guys all of them. So this is the recent one I did. Down the street from my house, there was a thing at the farm. So they had a tractor going back and forth. And
Uh-huh.
so I didn't want to put him right in the center, but I could only paint him because he was out of the brush for a few seconds near, and then he'd come back near this way, and then he'd come back this way. So it's kind of like tractor, tractor. Okay, that's it. Wait till he comes back, tractor, tractor. So that's how I painted this one. But I did take a photo of this scene, so I thought later I could go back and put the details on the tractor if I wanted. But I think the beauty of it is it's just the essence that I'm capturing here of the tractor. Really, it doesn't have to be all detailed and everything. And this was a painting, I brought the wrong white. So it still ended up looking okay for some of the values, but
Yeah. That's cool.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop the recording. And if anyone else wants to stay for a couple minutes, you're welcome.
May I say something, Kelly?
Before I stop the recording?
No?
Okay.